Chapter 10 considers the nature of change in organizations, including two types of change, reactive and proactive. Along with that, we will also explore the types of models of change, describe the purpose of organizational development, and discuss how to manage employees who fear or resist change. Organizations need to be prepared for change. Forces outside our control, such as demographic characteristics, technological advances, customer preferences, political and social changes, along with so much more, force an organization to change. In fact, page 380 identifies several forces for change outside and inside an organization. There are two types of change that we will discuss. The first is reactive change. This is making changes in response to problems or opportunities as they arise. So you see something and you react to it and you make the necessary changes. The second is proactive or planned change, which involves making clearly thought out changes in anticipation of possible expected problems. Most CEOs, general managers, and other public sector leaders agree that incremental changes are no longer sufficient in a world that is operating in fundamentally different ways. Life in general, they say, is becoming more complex, and the firms that can manage that complexity are the ones that will survive in the long term. Clearly, we are all in for an interesting ride. But how do managers know when their organizations need to change? The answers aren't clearly cut, but you can get clues by monitoring the forces of change, both outside and inside the organization. Excuse me. I want to remind you that technology is not just computer technology. It is any machine or process that enables an organization to gain a competitive advantage in changing materials. So we know that one of the biggest changes that we are seeing is through technology. So let's take a look at this answer here. So before we even decide and go into depth on what each of the changes are, or what we've learned in previous chapters about these differences that impact, these things that impact organizations. Tony's restaurant, Ceroti Pasta on Cape Cod, is open during the high season from May until October. He always hired college students on summer vacation. In recent years, the number of workers who quit midsummer has risen significantly. When he asks, they say they are quitting because they have enough money or they want time off. This is probably an example of what kind of change. If you answered B, social or political change, you are correct. The changes in the population Tony hires from outside are out of his control, but they are not controlled by the market. They aren't controlled by the economy or technology. So it is most likely coming from changes in social changes. Of course, they have enough money that might be good in a good, might be a good point in a good economy, but also might be what is perceived by this population, this demographic, as what is enough for them. The next section we are going to discuss is the three types of change from least to most threatening. Lewis's change model and the system's approach to change. First, the three changes. The first is least threatening, adaptive change. We've seen this stuff like this before. It is the reintroduction of a familiar practice. For example, during the annual labor sale, a department store may ask its sales employees to work 12 hours instead of the usual 8. During tax preparation, your accountants are working more hours than off tax season. And although accounting employees are in different departments from a sales employee, is expected that they won't really be upset in this temporary change of hours since they've seen it affect someplace else within the organization. Somewhat threatening is innovative change. This is something new for this company. It is the introduction of a practice that is new to the organization, and it is characterized by a moderate complexity, cost, and uncertainty. It triggers fear and resistance among employees. For example, should a department store decide to adapt a new practice of competitors by staying open 24 hours a day, this is requiring employees to work flexible schedules, and it might be moderately threatening to them. And then finally, we have very threatening, radically innovative change. This is brand new in our industry, for example. It involves introducing a practice that is new to the industry. It is very complex, costly, and uncertain, and it is extremely threatening to employees' job security as well as managers' confidence. For example, Amazon is currently testing a new delivery system called Prime Air in Canada, the United Kingdom, Prime Air in Canada, United Kingdom, and the Netherlands. So the program uses drones to carry packages up to 5 pounds in 30 minutes or less. The goal is safely to operate drones within a distance of 10 miles. So this is a very radical, innovative change. So let's take a look at this question. At the Big Peaches department store, employees generally know that during annual inventory, they are required to work overnight shifts. This is an example of what kind of change. If you answered A, adaptive change, you're correct. This involves reinstituting a practice that employees are familiar with, so they know that it's an annual thing and they're required to work more hours. So psychologist Kurt Lewin developed a model with 3 stages. The first stage is the unfreezing stage. This is where managers try to instill in employees the motivation to change, encouraging them to let go of attitudes and behaviors that are resistant to innovation. For this unfreezing stage to take place, employees need to be dissatisfied with the old way of doing things. Managers also need to reduce the barriers to change during this stage. In the second stage, the changing stage, employees need to be given the tools for change, new information, new perspectives, new models of behavior. Managers can help by providing benchmarking results, role models, and training, and experts. It's advisable, experts say, to convey the idea that change is a continuous learning process. It's just not a one-time event. In the refreezing stage, employees need to be helped to integrate the changed attitude and behavior into their normal ways of doing things. Managers can also assist by encouraging employees to exhibit the new change and then through additional coaching and modeling by reinforcing the employees in that desired stage. Change creates additional change. That's the lesson of the systems theory. Promoting someone from one group to another, for instance, may change the employee interactions in both. By adopting a team-based structure may require changing the compensation system to pay bonuses based on team rather than individual performance. A systems approach to change presupposes that any change, no matter how small, has a rippling effect throughout an organization. The systems model of change consists of 3 parts. Inputs. Why should we ask the question, why should we change? And how willing and able are we to change? In this approach, we ask this question, why change is needed at all. Whatever the changes are, they need to align to the company's mission, vision, and vision statement and strategic plan. In addition to answering why should we change, are we ready to change is another question. Readiness for change has 4 components. How strongly the company needs the proposed change, how much the top management supports the change, how capable employees are of handling the change, and how pessimistic or optimistic are employees about the consequences of the result. The second part of the systems model is target elements of change. This represents 4 target elements of change which are people, organizational arrangements, methods, social factors. It is important to note that any change made will affect the entire organization and that all changes affect the people in the organization and vice versa. And the third part is outputs. Asking the question, what results do we want from the change? Output represents the desired goals of the change. What do we want to happen if we do X? This change or output should be in line with the organization's strategic plan. Throughout this process, there's feedback. Feedback is important once the output of the change has occurred. Answering the question, how is the change working and what alternate alterations need to be made, all part of the feedback process. Organizational development, or OD, is a set of techniques for implementing planned change to make people and organizations more effective. It has 3 steps: diagnosis, intervention, and evaluation that you see in this visual. Note the inclusion of people in this definition. Our organization development focuses specifically on people in the change process. Some scholars apply the term organizational development to techniques designed to improve organizational effectiveness, and the term change management to techniques designed to improve people effectiveness. Techniques that will help them, in one definition, to adopt new mindsets, policies, processes, and behaviors to deliver organizational results. Often, OD is put into practice by a person known as the change agent, which is a consultant with a background in behavioral sciences who can be the catalyst in helping organizations deal with old problems in new ways. The key to remember is that an OD expert is a consultant in behavioral sciences, and they're brought in from the outside to help the organization. And they help in situations such as managing conflict, and they're the executive coach in helping to improve relationships with the organization. They help to revitalize organizations. These OD experts can help by helping open communication, foster innovation, dealing with stress, and they help people adapt to mergers. They are experts in helping integrate two firms with varying cultures, products, and procedures. So the OD process works like this. The first thing they do is they diagnose. What is the problem? So consultants or managers use some combination of questionnaires, surveys, interviews, meeting records, and all of that to ascertain people's attitudes and to identify problem areas. Then there's intervention. What shall we do about it? Some OD activities, from implementing plan change, are communicating survey results to employees to engage them in constructive problem solving, observing employee communication patterns, and teaching them skills to improve them, helping group members learn to function as a team, and so forth. And then we have evaluation. How well has the intervention worked? Answers may lie in hard data about absenteeism, turnover, grievances, and profitability, which should be compared with earlier statistics. The change agent then can use the surveys, the questionnaires, and interviews and the like to assess changes in employee attitudes. And then finally, throughout this whole process, feedback. How can the diagnosis and intervention be further refined? If evaluation shows that the diagnosis was wrong or the intervention was not effective, the OD consultant or managers need to return to the beginning. So let's take a look at question number 3. Fred, an OD consultant, is designing a survey of employee attitudes to be given to workers at Lemon Automobile Company. Fred is in the blank stage of OD. So if you answered B, diagnosis, you are correct. He is collecting information to diagnose the problem. So research has found that OD is most apt to be successful under the following things. OD success stories tend to use multiple interventions. We have goal setting, feedback, recognition and rewards, training, challenging job design. All have had good results in improving performance and satisfaction. Combined interventions have found to work better than single interventions. OD is more likely to be successful when top managers give the OD program their support and are truly committed to change process and the desired goals of the change program. Using employee feedback during the change process is one way to demonstrate this support. Change programs are more successful when they are oriented toward achieving both short-term and long-term results. Managers should not engage in organizational change for the sake of change. Change efforts should produce positive results. So OD effectiveness is affected by cross-cultural considerations. Thus, an OD intervention that worked in one country should not be blindly applied to similar situations in another. Today, innovation is about much more than new products. It is about reinventing business processes and building entirely new markets that meet untapped customer needs. You need creativity and intervention, but until you can connect the creativity to the customer in the form of a product or service that meaningfully changes their lives, then you don't have innovation. So innovation is more likely to occur when organizations have a proper culture, resource, and reward system to support it. So we can classify innovations by the type of innovation and the focus of innovation. In the type of innovation, we have approaches. First, we'll talk about product innovation, which is the change in the appearance or performance of a product or the creation of a new one. Process change is a change in the way a product is conceived, manufactured, or disseminated. The focus measures the scope of innovation. And the core innovation may be small or large, incremental or radical. The difference is in modifying versus replacing existing products or services. A new direction innovation is a breakthrough that doesn't exist yet. So if we have improvement innovations, enhance or upgrade an existing product, these types of innovations are often incremental and are less likely to generate significant amounts of revenue. And an example of that would be, the updates of your Apple iPhone. New direction innovations are totally new or different approach to a product, service, or process. The invention of a breakthrough product or service that are aimed at creating new markets. So an innovation system is a set of interdependent process and structures that dictates how the company searches for novel problems and solutions, synthesizes ideas into a business concept and product design, and selects which projects get funded. Innovation takes effort and resources, and the process must be nurtured and supported. Research and practice have identified 7 components of the innovation system that we see here. First is create an innovation strategy. You want to create a plan for being more innovative. This is requiring a company to integrate its innovation activities into its business strategy. And a successful innovation effort requires innovation strategy by which a company integrates its activities into that strategy. And the effort will encourage top managers to invest resources in innovation and employees to commit to it. Second, we have commitment from senior leaders. Achievement of strategic goals is unlikely without real commitment from senior leaders. And as we've learned throughout the book, that everybody needs to be supported. The entire organization has to be on board and has to work together to achieve the strategic plan and the goals of the company. Number 3 is foster an innovation culture and climate. Risk-averse cultures are obstacles to innovation, so it requires a corporate culture and climate that permit experimentation, risk tolerance, and tolerance for failure. So required structure and processes. We can foster collaboration, cross-functional communication. We develop the necessary human capital, productive potential. We use that, individuals' knowledge and actions. We have human resource policies and practices and procedures. They must be consistent with and reinforce the other 6 components. Companies that can make human resource policies, practices, and procedures consistent with and reinforcing of the other six components we just described are more likely to be innovative and have higher financial performance. And then finally, appropriate resources. This can include people, money, time, energy, knowledge, and focus. So let's take a look at this question. Wendy's created display screens at its drive-through windows that show customers their orders and prices. This is an example of, if you guessed B, process, you are right. A process innovation is a change in the way a product or service is conceived, manufactured, and distributed. The fact that this is the process through, the drive-through is a process for the customer, so customers are able to see their orders and prices on this display. That is part of the process through the drive-through. We end the lecture with a discussion of the threat of change and the causes of resistance to change and why employees fear change. Resistance to change is an emotional or behavioral response to real or imagined threats to an established work routine. Resistance can be as subtle as passive resignation and as overt as deliberate sabotage. So as you will learn, change experts believe that resistance does not primarily reside within the individual, but instead is a result of the context in which change occurs. So in this visual, resistance to change is characterized by three causes: employee characteristics and their individual differences and inactions and perception to change. Second, change agent characteristics. The individual who is a catalyst helping organizations change also consists of his or her individual differences and perceptions to the change. And finally, the change agent, employee relationship. As you might expect, resistance to change is reduced when change agents and employees have a trusting relationship, faith in each other's intentions. Mistrust, on the other hand, encourages secrecy, which begets deeper mistrust and can doom an otherwise well-conceived change. So whether changes are adaptive, innovative, or radically innovative, employees may resist change for all kinds of reasons. So here's a list of reasons why employees resist change. Again, the mistrust, the failure of fear, the loss of job security, the peer pressure. Think about the loss of job security and your local Kroger, and you have these the checkout without clerks. That is a loss of job for someone. If you have 3 checkout lanes with no clerk, that's 3 people or 4 people that have lost a job or something. So that change, yes, it's in some ways beneficial for the customer and the company, but then again, it's an offset that change is it will hurt employees. We also have personality conflicts, and here we have 10 for various reasons, and they're all good reasons why employees may resist change. So maybe there are other reasons that you can identify that why an employee might resist change. And so think about it. Have you ever resisted change in the workplace because something has been implemented and it's going to change the way things are done? How did that feel, and what reason did you give that you might resist this change? So, and think about what can we as managers do to make things easier and do this change. So there's several things that we can do. We can do training. We can work with them, provide them the support and the help and the reassurance that that this change will not impact them in the way they think that it will impact them. So there are several things that we can do to reassure employees and help implement that change in a more effective and positive way. Well, this concludes Chapter 10.